All right, guys, welcome to another episode of The Conscious Endeavor. We're here talking about the nature of the self, society, reality, physics, crazy things, spirituality, science, all the good stuff. I'm here with my good buddy Omar. He is the owner of the Omziel Healing Sanctuary out in North Bergn, right? So beautiful space. You know, you facilitate a lot of events there. You have a lot of different type and different theme events. I know you have a big kind of festival music type thing happening this spring, you know, late spring,
right?
I suppose that is. And then we also have, you have cold plunges, right? Collective cold plunges, really cool stuff. Men's circles, things like that. Why don't you just maybe open up, talk about Omziel Healing, what you guys do a little bit. We can start at that.
I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on the show. It was just a great honor just to, you know, be invited. And I just started going over lots of things that we do. And there's just so many things. I've had people tell me like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, all right, do you have like 4 minutes, you know, as opposed to 2 minutes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you got to get that elevator pitch on point,
exactly,
right? It's like,
yeah.
how much time do you have right now? Because
exactly.
we could go in.
Yeah. Because the elevator pitch just gives just a quick brush over of what we do.
Yeah.
Which we're all about mindset. That's the number one thing that we're really doing there is tapping into the deeper parts of your brain. So all the other stuff is just like fluff and behind the scene type of stuff.
Right.
So it's almost like a ruse just to get people in. That way, once they're in, then they get to see the deeper parts of themselves and what is it that they can do. So we're located in North Bergen, New Jersey. We've been there for about maybe 7 years or so, but we've been aggressively at this Omziel Healing Sanctuary for about 3 years now. And it's been growing like incredible, and people have been coming through. And one of our main staples is the breathwork with the ice plunge.
Yeah.
Right.
So a lot of physiological effects. People really meet in their ego, I suppose, right? There's a lot of, you know, mental resistance, I think, that comes up in, you know, physical circumstances. And again, there's kind of a, you know, where we can develop maybe a healthy relationship with the type of stress that we, you know, give our bodies to. Because a lot of times the stress that we have throughout the day kind of comes on, you know, not really welcomed, you know what I mean? Like these kind of random things and again, how we deal with stress and how we kind of cope. I mean, you know, it is a body response, you know what I mean? And learning how to mitigate that body response. I think a lot of that stuff comes up with the cold exposure.
For sure. What we've learned in some of our studies is that the way humans are built, we're built for short stresses. Not for long term, like I gotta pay my bills, or you know, my relationship's not working out, or they don't like me, and that just is like it's ongoing, and that's where disease comes in. But we're built for short stresses. That's how we grow. That's where the breath work comes in, and then the ice. We're in there for 2 minutes, a big tub with a lot of water and a lot of ice. But once you're in it, it's hard to think about like, oh, did I turn off the stove before I left the house? Or, you know, am I going to do that project tomorrow and the job, is it going to work? You're like right here, right now, deal with it. You're here and stay with your breath.
Yeah. And I mean, staying in the body, I mean, even just for 2 minutes, you know what I mean, is something that doesn't sound like a crazy feat. I mean, it forces you to do it when you're in the cold plunge. But even like, if we think about just the daily, you know, how many things you actually think about in a 2 minute span, like if you were to be mindful of like, if you could just kind of record your brain activity, you know, you'd be thinking about what do I have to do tomorrow? You know, as you said, relationship things from the past, things work-oriented, you know, family things. It's always popping in and out of our minds. And especially when we kind of have, I think, like that leisure time, you know, our minds just start to wander. And how we control our attention and how we understand our, you know, attention is really interesting. And I think, you know, that cold plunge, again, that whole idea, forcing you to stay in body, you know what I mean? Because your body's just reacting. And it's kind of one of those things where they say, like, get out of your own way. Right. You know what I mean? Turn off the chatter, trying to stopping your mind, but it forces you to do that in a way.
Exactly. Yeah. So the prefrontal lobe here in your brain is a new part of the brain in the evolution of man.
Right, the neocortex.
The neocortex.
Yes.
So this frontal part is the one where you're rationalizing, you know, your whole realm, you know, making lots of decisions, but sometimes it's on overdrive. So what we do is we're tapping into the deeper parts of our brain, you know, that way we can slow down that monkey mind. It's just spinning, like it's on overdrive. And then we make bad decisions. We make emotional decisions. We just knee jerk as opposed to, just breathing, staying and remaining the eye of the storm.
Yeah. I like that reference, the monkey mind thing, right? Because it goes back to the Zen philosophy, how they talk about the monkey mind that's just this automatic, kind of thought process, something that's just constantly running. And again, learning how to kind of dissociate from that or get away from that, as you're talking about this frontal lobe functioning, right? I mean, there's so many practices, that you can dive into as you talked about mindset. How do we kind of control that, and how do we get into that? And in terms of like just the body physiology too, there's like I was reading recently about cold shock proteins and how those are released, and how it kickstarts fat burning. There's all sorts of other physiological creating more mitochondria, right? Because those are what create heat. So you force that, right? Exactly. You get this brown fat, deeper or increased amounts of mitochondria, increased amounts of fat burning. And as everybody knows, the calorie, right, is like that measure of heat. It's a measure of heat, right? Like I think how much it takes, like one, I don't remember how the specifics, 1 cubic of water or something like that to 1 degree. So it's like, you're literally forcing the body to adapt. And that's, really amazing. Again, there's so much more mental transformation that's going on under the surface, as you said.
For sure.
Too.
That's what we're tapping into, is just the mental state, because most of us are just, we're just living in a world that so many things are going on. It's your phone or the internet or your home and the movies, and you're getting like thousands upon thousands of messages all day from the bus, in the train, and everything is just telling you. And a lot of these messages, what are they saying? You're not good enough. You're not tall enough. You're not slim enough. You're not big enough. You're not short enough. You're just not enough. But what we teach in the Omziel Healing Sanctuary is that you are enough, and you just have to realize that, like that self-realization. We're big on that. Like, who are you? Do you know who you are? Once you know who you are, then you can realize, well, what's my purpose in life too? Right. And I can move forward that way. Yeah. But it all begins really with like realizing that there is something going on. Because if you don't even know anything's going on, you're just going. They got you.
Yeah, there's a big potential too in again, going through these exposures, these cold exposures, like there's a potential, there might be a thing in your mind saying, well, I can't do that. There's no way I can't do, and there's all this resistance.
For sure.
But when you just, let go and give into the process, and this is kind of like a metaphor for life in a way, that you just put yourself in that situation, you notice your body makes adjustments to do so. And it can be excruciating for the ego, right? Because you're meeting with something you told yourself you can't do. Right. You know what I mean? And now once you break that barrier, you get beyond that wall, it gets into mindset of understanding, what they talk about in psychology with like having a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. The fixed mindset says, I can't do this, I can do this, I'm the kind of person that would do that, you know what I mean? And then but when you put yourself into those, kind of even just jarring situations, and you notice how your body changes and how you react, and that you are capable, you bring out those kind of latent potentials.
For sure.
In people, and that's phenomenal.
It is, especially when you get to see someone break through those barriers. Like even for myself, like, you would think, I was born in New York City, in Brooklyn, right? This is a Brooklyn accent, by the way.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know.
That's right, exactly. And, I come from a tough neighborhood, everything was hard, and it beats you down. I'm not supposed to thrive. I'm not supposed to, stand up and do things, and I was like that for many decades, it was just terrible. It was a drag down, knock down fight, Right. But then I found some of these healing modalities, and this one in particular, which is not a new one, by the way. This is a very ancient practice. So whoever's made it popular.
Right, Wim Hof and all these people.
Exactly. I usually don't mention him because he doesn't mention me in his podcast. Right. But yes, of course, guys like that. He bring the science to it. Yeah. That has been going on for years.
And it also allowed scientists to study him, which is a big thing too, because a lot of these practices, again, these ancient practices, these people end up becoming reclusive, you know what I mean? They don't, and the difference between the Buddha, right, who would, kind of go into a mountain, the Buddha lifestyle, versus the Bodhisattva, who would come back to society and kind of, help the fellow man, like understanding and seeing enlightenment and understanding that needed to be spread. And I think you're one of the people living that kind of Bodhisattva life. Yeah. So
I like to think so.
Yeah. Many props to that.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, as you said, growing up, how tough, life in the Northeast can be. What brought you on a healing path? What was maybe some of the realizations that kickstarted that, or how did you find that?
Well, there was a time when my life was just one big train wreck. Like I was just going through life and smashing everything. My relationships, my finances, my spirituality, my health, everything was just in the toilet. I thought everything was good. I thought I was the cool guy in the room and the smartest one too, actually, But it starts to fall apart after a while. And I knew inherently, like most of us do, that something's wrong. Something is wrong. Something's not right here. Like, what is it? Like, okay, the finances and my relationships, but there's something deeper wrong here. I'm just not happy, and it just started with that. And then I started seeking different healing modalities and belief systems. I went to ashram and silent retreats and did all kind of other belief systems like that.
Right.
But nothing really worked. The thing really that helped me come to some realization was I went to the Amazon basin and did some medicine there, some plant medicine. And that's really what really helped me on the path.
Right. Like kind of jarred you out of that space. Yeah.
For sure. That's what put me on that path right there. And I was like, wait a minute. Wow. Like, I'm walking around with this. I put it down for a moment and I was like, I'm not going to pick that up. I'm not going to do that no more. I'm not going to live like that. I'm not going to treat people like that. Stuff like that.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because a lot of times I think about like this diffusion, right? Like diffusion in chemistry is like how everything spreads out, right? If you put water, or if let's say you put salt in water, the salt will unanimously fill the water and become a mixture, right? So I kind of think about that in the same sense of like emotions, right? That we constantly diffuse our emotions amongst the people around us. And if, for example, if you're in a tense situation, like people in the room may get tense, or if there's that one person who is very relaxed, counter, they might bring a certain energy to that. And I think there is kind of like this unconscious diffusion that occurs with emotion. You know what I mean? We're constantly giving off and smacking it back. And that's why, like, when you get in the rough and tumble in New York, you know what I mean? People are like, get out of my way, blah, 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 move, whatever. Right. Yep. And we're all just throwing this energy around, and not realizing that, when they talk about like the ancient art of transmutation, of how to take that energy and kind of, change it, put a different spin on it. And as you're saying, let go, right? Let go of that baggage. And,
exactly. I tend to have some of these talks with people, from where I come from, or people with similar backgrounds and like that. And oftentimes I could already see in their face, they're looking at me like, there's kind of some woo-woo stuff. Like,
right.
But like,
stop playing me.
Stop playing like that. Come on, get out of here with that. And I'm like, no, there's just a better way. It's a mindset. Get out of that thinking. You think you're not enough. You think you're not rich and you're not beautiful. You're not handsome and those type of things. And then it seeps into other parts of your life too.
Right.
Like whatever career that you're looking for. Like I want to write a book, but I can never write a book. Who's going to buy my book or something like that?
Right, where this negative self-talk kind of comes in. Yeah. And it's interesting too, because a lot of it is conceptually driven, based off the culture, based off the society.
For sure.
And people adopt these kind of mentalities. And a lot of times too, it reflects on the self-identity. Like, I can't do that. Like, I'm not the kind of, we have all these kind of schemas or these ideas of like, well, if you're a writer, you dress a certain way, you look a certain way, whatever.
Right.
But, we definitely need to get away from those concepts, those things that we identify with, that kind of limit our potential, limit our growth. We have these kind of limiting thought processes. And
For sure. Daniel, I want to tell you, I usually explain it like salmon swimming upstream. Like, all the fish are going the other way. And you're trying to go up over the rocks and then this bear's waiting there also to grab you to, It's tough, man.
Yeah.
It's just the society that we're in. But that's what Omziel is there. We're a beacon, to let people know. Come through. Like, you don't have to walk around with guilt and shame. You just don't. Let that go. Like, whatever happened to you when you were younger, and those traumas that happened, just let them go. Right. We can't do nothing about those things anymore. Forgive those people. They did it because it was done to them too.
Right.
You see?
Yeah. And that's the hard thing too, is understanding that, again, we're born kind of into a society that is already in motion. There's already a kind of a collective momentum, and it takes a certain you know, maybe it takes specific events or specific things to happen for us to realize that like, oh, well, I can actually choose this, you know, and I think this is also why a lot of people like, you know, talk about, you know, if you travel or if you do something else or you get outside of your own frame, you know, sometimes we need those external events to like jar us out of like, wow, okay, like I was somewhere else, even mentally.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you have an event occur,
for sure,
you know, where I was in my mind and where I am now. And when you come back to that, you know, that reference kind of gives you this like, oh, okay, well, I'm choosing this. I'm choosing where, you know, when you come back to self, it's like, well, this is the product of, you know, an evaluative kind of, I guess, space that you come into, and it really helps that transformation.
Right. That comes back to one of the exercises that we are showing people, which is the cold shock therapy. See, it's that jarring that you speak of. Right. Because oftentimes we need that. Like, how many times have you known somebody and go, man, that guy's an asshole, and then you meet him like months or years later, and then you go, he's such a nice guy. What happened? Then they go, he was in a car accident or something like that, or he was faced with, Yeah. It's that thing you talk about. Yeah. But we say, why wait for those events? Right. We don't have to wait. Just do it now. Choose now to be great. Yeah. Choose now to be wonderful and powerful and to go for those things that you want, whatever that dream is or whatever. That's what we do.
Yeah, bringing that into the real world, I think, is something that we all really need. A lot of people kind of like live in the shadow of, you know, also just carrying, as you said, weight, like, you know, just literally thinking about it. I heard an analogy recently that was just saying like, you know, if your journey is like, you know, say you're walking up a hill, right? This is your journey, but it's so much easier if you drop the weight. You know, think about how much harder the journey is if you're like, well, I got this bag and I can't do this because of this. And now all of a sudden you're making that journey to where you need to be, I suppose, the difference between the ideal self and your real self, right? We have this kind of distinction. And then we see the gap and then we start filling in, well, that gap's there because of this. Right. And that is there because of this. And only because I did X, Y, and Z, you know, and we constantly, again, that neocortex just starts rattling off and says, well, I'm not there now. So therefore, right, there must be something wrong with myself or my journey or, you know, and again, like shedding that is a huge process.
Yeah. If you study, which we're huge on books, like we share lots of books with people. Cool. Because books are like a window. You just open it and you get to see different places and you go, I can go there, right? It's just like the wheel. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. They already made the wheel. In fact, if you read the book, it even has the instructions on how to use it, right? See?
Right.
But you know, once you realize certain things in your life and you open up to many possibilities, like your life just changes dramatically. It's incredible. Like if you study all the masters, they all tell you that it's all in your mind. It's all the perception of what's going on in this realm, and the possibilities are endless. We could do whatever we want. Yeah.
It's interesting too, because how rigid our minds can really become, you know, just living, especially I think the fact that we have monotony, the fact that we have repetitive kind of lifestyles. And I think, again, influenced by the culture, like, you know, if we're doing the same things every day, we're kind of, I feel like spirit kind of flies in spontaneity. Like being spontaneous to me, and maybe it doesn't work for everybody, but for me, like being spontaneous and having that ability to kind of not really necessarily predict what's going to happen to me that day is exhilarating. You know, a lot of people, some people like order, you know what I mean? But at the same time too, it's like you need to leave yourself open. And being open in and of itself is part of that process. Because some people, again, as you said, you know, you bridge people with these concepts and they're like, get out of here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's silly. That's whatever. Yeah. You know, and this is also, I think, why, for me, I became kind of very intellectual. And why I ended up studying psychology and why I went into these things, because certain things like that were met with doubt in the common culture. You know what I mean? Well, you can choose to transcend these concepts, and these are concepts we choose to align to. And some people, you know, they say, well, okay, that's like, you know, maybe it's weird. But again, you know, it comes down to choice. And whether or not, you know, we ascribe it, we're making the choice to continue to hold something or to continue to whatever. One thing I like to say is that humans are the holders of time. You know, we take specific events and, you know, we hold, and I'm this way because of this, this, and this. right? You know, and one thing again, looking at the psychology of it is like how susceptible your memory is to things like mood and how you're currently feeling. So when we're down, right, we're like, well, you know, I suck, and I suck because this happened and this happened, and you start to reflect on all the negatives. But likewise, when you come above that, you'll say you nail a job interview, or you know, you get a new relationship, something like that, and you're like, well, I'm great because, you know, they like me because of, you know, this quality and this quality and this quality. And how congruent, what we call like mood congruent memory in psychology. It's like this whole idea that, like, you know, it's so dependent on the initial state. And I think this is kind of maybe why we seek kind of externalized forms of changing ourselves, because we, you know, always, it's kind of how we identify naturally.
Right. As opposed to identifying with, I'm a human, I'm being, I'm energy, and I'm here. And we're always in that constant judgment thing. Yeah, for sure. And then you spoke about earlier about, you know, making certain choices, like, and just being in that rhythm of things, right? It makes me think of Stephen Kotler's Stealing Fire, right? You know this one?
Not familiar.
Oh, it's a great book, and he talks about being in the flow. He has this whole flow genome type of thing, but really, he talks about how professional athletes experience being in the flow. They're just in the moment, like time is suspended for them.
Right.
Like there's no judgment or anything like that. They're just in it. Artists experience those things too.
Right.
So that's what we're pushing for also.
Yeah, being kind of one with your creation too.
Exactly.
I mean, when you're an athlete, you know, you're scoping or I'd say sculpting, you know, yourself and your attitude, or your, you know, how you run, how you operate, you know, running your routes, doing whatever as an athlete, but even as an artist too, like getting lost in your craft. You know, I think that's such a huge thing, because again, as you said, like that monkey mind kind of leaves you when you're lost in that art of creation.
Right. But how do we get out of it though? You see, this is what we're tapping into. It's that exercise. That's one of the things that we offer, is just, it's like going to the gym. That's it. You're not going to go to the gym and pick up 100 pounds. Like, you have to start with 5 and 10. I don't know what it is. Go take a cold shower.
Right.
I don't know, you know, or come through and be 2 minutes in the ice. You're not going to die. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
You know,
this is the thing too, is like the mind resists before the body does.
For sure.
You know, and it's like we hold those.
There's no limit. There's no limit. There's no limit. Yeah. The mind is just limitless. If we just allow it to go, you know, the body will follow.
Right.
The body. And it's so helpful. You know, like if there was something that they said, hey, Danny, you got to, you know, take this, it'll help you. You'd be like, I don't know about that. I see it's helping other guys.
Don't make me.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know if that's for me. Like, you know, I'm not that kind of person, which is another lie. You're not a kind of person.
Yeah.
We just do what we do. We make choices, like you said.
Yeah. I mean, I think also this is also why I think that for the West, you know, like our mentality really benefits and really has absorbed a lot of these Eastern practices, because we have the idea, you know, psychology says, you know, there's personality traits and there's this, and they'll tell you you have a genetic predisposition for X, Y, and Z, and we think that that is set in stone and solid, but those are, you know, sciences from the 50s. You know what I mean? And this is the thing, that the modern culture hasn't caught up to how fast science is moving nowadays, right? Talking about neuroplasticity and epigenetics, like literally how genes can turn on and off based on behavior. You know what I mean? And again, tapping into that. And I like what you said there, where like, you know, you execute with the mind and the body will follow. Right? You know what I mean? So super cool stuff there.
It moves into that realm of like, I'm the master here. I like to tell people, we're living in a Ferrari. This is a high performance vehicle right here. Right? In fact, this part of your head right here, what do we call it? It's the temple. They even named it that too. You see? So this is our temple right here. We should be putting high octane fuel in it, right? And then take it out for a run. Take it out for a spin. You know, some people don't even check the lights when the light goes off in the car. I don't know, what is that?
Ignore it.
It's like, it's your car, man. Pay attention. Do something. Step out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, it's interesting too, like with the car analogy, even here, like you're so focused on the road, you know what I mean? But how are your tires?
Exactly.
Right? You know what I mean? Like, what is your engine? When's the last time you changed your oil? You know what I mean? Like that kind of maintenance is very, you know, obvious to us, but it's also like when we think about internal maintenance, and again, with Western culture, how we've looked at mental health for a very long time. You know, I feel like we're kind of going through a mental health revolution in the last 10, 20 years.
Oh, I believe so.
You know?
Sure. Yeah. We don't know it. We're just in it.
Yeah.
You know, like the 20 years ago, we were in it. You know, yeah.
That happened.
Yeah,
Do you remember?
I was there. Yeah. Exactly.
That was crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
People are realizing lots and lots of things now and coming out of those old mindsets, you know, breaking with tradition and what mom and dad taught us and stuff. And how many people I've met and talked to them, hey, you know, come and let's do this. And I don't know, man. You know, I heard that you could get sick from that. Like, you didn't even read about it, bro. You're hearing something. Like, you should question those things.
Right.
We should question everything.
100%. I think curiosity plays a huge part in just understanding yourself. I mean, you know, the only way you get answers is if you ask questions, right? Sure. So, you know, you want to kind of push the envelope. And I was someone growing up, like, who was always just like naturally like, why do we do this? Like, why do we do things this way? And you know, what, you know, again, it was interesting too, because, you know, growing up in this area, you know, general Northeast was always like, you know, there was always as they say, a mask, you know, you put on a front. You know what I mean? You put up this, yeah, what's up, man? Like, how you doing? Like, what's good? How, you know what I mean? And you put this energy out there that is just what you've seen. You know, we kind of do the monkey see, monkey do thing. Right. Monkey mind takes over. We emulate, you know, we see our parents again acting like this. There's a funny saying I heard recently that traditions are just peer pressure from dead people.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You know, it's like, okay, we're just ascribing to these things that have been. And also,
what are you doing? I don't know. My grandfather did it. You know?
Right.
You might want to look into that a little bit.
Especially like emotional patterns, communication styles, how we deal with things. Because also, you know, we think that, like, again, from the psychology perspective, that children are going to emulate. So the second that, and the traditional paradigm of like reward and punishment, you know, it's like a child acts in a way that you don't want. So our first reaction is to punish them, to a lot of times meet them with aggression, right? And things like that. And now what the child is unconsciously understanding is like, okay, when somebody doesn't do what you want them to do, you respond with force. You know what I mean? And then we start to unconsciously emulate that in our friend groups and things like this. And then we mirror and meet people who have similar coping styles, similar communication styles, you know, and it's funny. The rabbit hole.
It's true.
Right?
True. If you would have met me like, I don't know, 20 years ago, we probably wouldn't even be friends. Like, I was just a totally different person.
Yeah, well, I'd be 10.
I was all exactly, yeah. But, I would still be friends. But I was just that person that I was just trying to be something else, you know?
Right.
This is what I saw. My old man was from the streets too, and he left when I was 9, and he probably checked out, you know, years before that emotionally too, right? Right. But then with him absent there, you know, in my teenage years coming, you know, the streets were there with open arms, you know, hey, we'll be your friend, we'll be your family, come on. So I started emulating some of those things, you know, and I thought it was just the way to do and to be, but it wasn't serving me well. And it took me a long time to figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, it's really like we have to, in a way, kind of get to the end of the road to see where it is. Because a lot of times too, we want to see things with our own eyes, you know, no matter how much you're told something. I feel like at the end of the day, it's like we want to see it for ourselves. So a lot of people, you know, you may get signs from your friends or other people who are like, you're going down the wrong road, man. Like you're going down the wrong way. But we still see it kind of to the end. You know what I mean? Because it's like, well, where does that take me? And how do I know? And how I think it's just interesting how we project ourselves into the future, or even if we, you know, do project ourselves into the future. Because a lot of times, you know, modern America, where a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck, they're in survival mode. They're thinking about, how am I going to, you know, get this in 2 weeks? You know what I mean? What am I going to do, you know, at this meeting at the end of this week? You know what I mean? So we're constantly in this barrage where we forget that, you know, the echoes of, I think, the ancient self, you know what I mean? I think that always is what really helps give me some perspective, is like, you know, if I was on this land 1,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago, what would I be doing? You know, how would I be living? You know,
that's good to live mindfully like that, because they don't. Again, you speak about, like, you know, Western philosophies, you know, and Eastern philosophies, right? They're just so different in that contrast, where you should be paying attention to, like, what is it that you're doing and why you're doing it, you know, and then. Thank God for people who are living up to those standards too, and living a righteous life, right? Because whether I know it or not, people are looking at me, right? Because, you know, the way you are, you've seen other people be that way, and that has helped to shape and mold you and who you are. Ultimately, you're right. You have to make your own decision and stuff like that. But, you know, there has been some people in my life that have shown me great things. And that always stood there, you know,
Right.
in the back of my mind.
Right.
That way, you know, I didn't rob that liquor store or you know, or some heinous crime or something like that. You know, yeah, because I felt like, wait a minute, that's not really the right thing to do. I know I'm doing these other things, you know. And then you know, you speak about like with Buddhism like actually strips you from all of those things, right? It just takes those things away, like let those things go. You're just, you know, they're things that are temporary. You're trying to hold on to things that it's like sand in your hand. It has no value, you know. So we try to embrace those things. My father is actually a practicing Buddhist now. See,
wow.
So here's a guy from the streets that you know was teaching me all of these other things, womanizing and stealing and all kinds of other stuff. But now, you know, he also helped to shape me in that other way also.
That's wild. Now, did you guys come to a kind of like realization around the same time, or how did that?
Actually, I think it was more of his nature, you know, as getting older and seeking. He was always looking. And then I was like, man, I don't got time to look right now, you know, stuff like that. Right. You know, and then I seen by example is that thing that you said, monkey see, monkey do. Right? Because humans are just animals. That's all we are.
Yeah. We don't like to admit it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're human. We're animals.
Right.
Yeah, that's the species of animal that we are.
And the interesting thing too is like a lot of times if we are being reactive, you know, highly reactive to our environment and just emulating and doing these things, again, we become lost in the sea of what it is. But I think, you know, as maybe the Greeks or the Platonic people, Platonists, right, would say, is that like, you know, that ability to be evaluative and to make conscious choice and to weigh pros and cons, that's kind of the facility of the human mind, is to make those conscious judgments. And then they came up with ethics and morality and all of these things, because it's like, okay, well now, yeah, like my hormones tell me to jump on the table, punch that guy, go after that girl, you know what I mean? Do all these things, right? But it's like, you know, when we, you know, weigh in on the civilized self and the ethical nature of things, but again, also understanding that those are transitory, you know, chasing desire, as they say, you know, desire, the Buddhist perspective, that desire is suffering, that it constantly keeps you, okay, now I have to get this thing, I have to get this thing. Again, ignoring the Ferrari, right? Ignoring the larger practice. I think one of those things that really helped me too on like kind of a spiritual journey was tapping into that inherent biology of like, this is a supercomputer, you know? I mean, I kind of like to say sometimes the conscious mind is the baby in charge of the supercomputer. You know what I mean? Because your conscious mind's like, I want some halal food right now. And that those shoes are pretty dope, you know? But it's like you have, you can literally tap into dimensions. Like you can tap into other facets, you know?
Yeah, whatever it is that you want to do. You want to manifest in a career, and like this is just nothing compared to some of the things that we really can actually do.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too, because we have this perceived level of stress and we, again, hold that. You know, and it's hard to let go, I think, but it's interesting too, because a lot of the religions throughout history have always preached this idea of forgiveness and those things. And again, too, it's like, you know, when you forgive someone else, you're setting yourself free.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you're mad at them, but you're the one who's mad. Right. Of course, you're holding on to that. Right. You know, kind of thing.
Of course. Yeah, you think of like stoicism too. Like, it's those type of ideas that if somebody says you're an asshole, well, maybe you are. What are you upset about? You are one, you know, or maybe you're not, right? And if you know that you're not, what are you upset about too?
Right.
He's got you wrong. Like, you know.
Let it be. Yeah.
But we're holding on to that. Like, oh, you didn't talk to me like that. No, and then we carry it around for weeks. Right. Oh, when did that happen? Oh, it was 3 months ago. 3 months ago? And you're still walking around with it?
Yeah. It's interesting too, because it's like, even that statement, you talk to me like that. And it's like, well, what are we emphasizing? Are we emphasizing the talk? Or is it more like, why you can't talk to me like that? You know, when you take it personally, it's like where the barometer is for how we take things and how we understand things. But, you know, there's the wide kind of perspective. And one thing that kind of keeps me grounded sometimes is I always tell myself it's an argument between perspectives and not persons, right? You might disagree on particular things, but that doesn't mean that you're not both within your temple. Right. You know what I mean? Exactly. You should honor each other and you know, come to, and this is kind of like where I guess skill and communication and things like that, understanding the self, diving into transmutation again, like this idea that, because sometimes it's great just to, you know, as we call it, squash it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just squash that shit, right? So somebody comes at you with an energy of negativity, and rather than bouncing back and being reactive, you kind of say, well, I see how you would feel that way.
Right.
I see why you're upset. Like, that makes sense.
Right.
You know, and I'm sorry if I did that. And people are like,
yeah.
You know, they don't know how to, if you just absolve that, you know, now we can come to common ground.
Yeah.
You know, but again, we kind of do this like dance.
Yeah, it's true.
A lot of the time.
I'm still working on a lot of those things. Like, I've shed a lot and tons of stuff, but still working on things, you know. And there at Omziel Healing Sanctuary, you know, my wife is actually the other half of what we do. I just wanted to mention that.
100%.
So she's the other half. She usually does the harder job, taking care of the kids, which is really tough, you know. But she's my backbone, like everything that I do, and she supports me and supports everything that we do.
Yeah.
So, and we've got the calling. We like to say that the phone rang and we picked up the phone and we heard the message, and we do what the message says, because you don't have to do what the message says.
Right.
But we doing the message too, you know, and the message tells us to serve. Yeah. That's why we do it. We do it because there's a higher calling here.
Right.
We live a righteous life. Yeah, we do.
I mean, there's a lot of synchronicities in life, and it's really interesting because I know you and I had connected previously, you know, about I literally just called you up and I was like, yo, dude, like, I love what you're doing. Like, I got to come by, like, whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
You had one event, I missed that one, but then, like, you know, I think it was about maybe 6 months ago, we were at an event, yoga space. They had a shamanic journey.
I know.
And I was literally sitting next to your wife.
Yeah.
And I didn't know her face. I hadn't met her yet. But literally, we're sitting next to each other in this space, and we literally had like a similar vision in the shamanic deal. We had similar symbolism come up in it, and as we were talking about it, we realized that. And then she walks, you know, after you know, ceremony ends or whatever, she walks over to you, and I'm like, I know this guy. You know what I mean?
So, like, I know you. I was like, yeah, it was great. So weird. I was like, meeting me. Who are you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So
she's great. She's deep. She does pranic healing. This is a deep practice that she's getting into now. So the bit that I know about it is that, like, the chakras, energy wheels, right? Because that's what chakra means. And usually you go to someone so they can line up your chakras and have them spinning, but she actually cleans them deep inside. So there's been some incredible things that have gone down there at the Omziel Healing Sanctuary.
Wow.
Yes, miracle stuff. Like, I'm just speechless. Like, what is this? Is my mind playing with me, or?
Right. I mean, it's interesting too, because we can really intuitively understand, like, mental blocks, right? It's very easy for us to be like, oh, you know, the person had a mental block. Real simple. But to understand an energy block or having an energetic block and what that means, I think for our common culture is very hard to intuitivize.
For sure.
To, you know, understand what that means and how you could let go of this energetic block, you know? I mean, in terms of psychology, a lot of, we talk about, like, embodiment, right? And, like, the fact that if you are, and a simple example is, like, if you're stressed, you know, your shoulders are like this, you know, or your brow is like this. And sometimes people, like, you know, walk around, they're just like this all the time. That's how they speak. And, you know, you don't realize that you're holding tension, and tension, you know, muscle tension, if we even think about that, is like an energy.
That's all it is.
You know what I mean?
That's
it's held there. There's more blood. There's more, you know, if we think about the activation of the muscle, it comes from a nerve, which is electrical. Electrical energy. You know what I mean? So it all correlates, you know, and
for sure.
One of the interesting things too is, like, kind of the basis of a lot of the workshops that I do, you know, gets us into this frame of mind that this is all simultaneous. All these phenomena, you know, what the physics of this is, and the biology and the chemistry and the psychology and the neuroscience, all of these are simultaneous phenomena. They're all happening at once. But the common problem with the scientific community, it feels like, is that we use the reductionist paradigm. We pull it apart and we look at all the pieces individually to try and figure out each one and how they work, you know, but we forget this kind of holistic perspective.
It's almost like we've forgotten. But this society capitalizes on that, right? Like the pharmaceutical 100%. Industry and the marketing and all of these things that we're buying that we don't need. Like, you need it, it'll make your life easier and better and stuff like that. And these parts, they're separate. It's gonna fix this one. Don't worry about these, because this might happen.
Right.
But this one's gonna fix, you know.
Right.
But that thing you speak about, like, you know, just being one with yourself, and know that all of these things are happening. Your physical body, your Ferrari and all of that, the oil that you're putting in it, you know, the tires, everything. Yeah. Just pay attention to those things, and you'd be amazed by some of the things that you can do.
It's just also just the simplicity of some of this stuff, because sometimes it's like, honestly, like vinegar and baking soda, the two things are just like every cleaning product on the planet fixed.
Right.
Vinegar and even I started using baking soda, like just a little bit in water as a mouthwash.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's great for digestion.
It's also, you can drink it.
Yeah, it
you know what I mean?
helps to alkaline your body in the morning too.
100%.
There's lots of these things going on.
And there's these simple solutions to things, you know, bringing it back to just, I want to say bringing it back to the earth.
Right.
You know, bringing it down to brass tacks, you know, you might want to call it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like just being, you know, the sense of community that you're building even, you know, at Omziel, it's like, that is incredibly healing.
Thank you.
To see other people on the path and hearing about other people's struggles and things like this. I know you run the men's circle as well. Give that a shout out as well.
We do a men's circle. We do men's retreats now, and we do an online Zoom, you know, like every other week. And we go through the whole year, and it's built around just mindset and what's going on. You know, we're not talking about the poker game and all this other garbage, you know, we're talking about real stuff, and guys get like, wow, great things out of it. And then speaking about the retreats that we do also, we usually go for about anywhere between 5 or 4 days or 3 days, weekend, something like that. But some of the things that guys say, like in these groups, like we had one guy who said, my wife doesn't even know this. Wow. And he loves her and has kids with her too. Yeah. And he never spoke those words, but only spoke it with us in that group.
Yeah, camaraderie,
amazing.
You know, an amazing sense.
Powerful. It's priceless, brother. Priceless. You can't smoke it, you can't shoot it, you can't find it nowhere. It's beautiful, man.
Yeah, I mean, that vulnerability becomes incredibly important. Also because I think, as we were speaking about like the culture, men have been taught traditionally to ignore it, push past it, be tougher than that, suck it up.
Suck it up.
You know what I mean? And we don't learn how to cope. We don't learn how to share our, you know, vulnerabilities and share, you know, our just ability. And it's when you open that door, it's in like where you're going to go. Who knows? You know,
for sure.
It's really wild.
Life changing. How many people have come to me, Omar, you've changed my life. Wow. Thank you so much. I'm like, it's not me. It's you. I'm just providing the...
You came here.
Exactly,
You chose to come.
Right, yeah. What I like to tell them, Daniel, is that I'm like the doorman. That's all I am. Or I'm like the usher at the movies, making sure you get to your seat without knocking the popcorn down.
Right. The film is,
Exactly.
I like that. I like that. So yeah, I mean, so you have these retreats. You also have, again, in coming late spring in May, you have a
May 13th,
a full event coming out.
The rising ethos.
Yes.
Right. We like rising because it's the perpetual motion of up, and then the ethos, which we attain that like to like your character.
Okay. Yeah.
The character and sense of community and who you are. So that's rising. It's the community.
That's beautiful. Right. So that's May 13th this year.
Yeah, May 13th. Yeah.
Very cool. So yeah, how do you project the future of Omziel? Let's say like a couple of years, like where do you see this going? I mean, you're doing retreats and bigger events. Do you see this getting like land? See yourself staying in the urban area? Like what do you see for the future of Omziel?
Thank you for asking. I mean, we've thrown down lots of ideas on the table and we're looking at different ones, but land is always there in our vision and growing as well. We have a 2-family home. And we've turned the 2-family home into the sanctuary that it already is. So people come there and it's a hub, it's an energy hub. We started in the garage. And then we had some tenants living in the basement. Once they moved out, it was that call again that came through.
Yeah.
And the voice said, what are you going to do now? And I was like, yes, you're right. So we dedicated that space to healing, you know. So the future is extremely bright for us. People are coming like, oh my goodness. It was hard for me to get like 1 or 2 guys to come through. Now, you know, there's like a dozen guys coming in for ice and breath. And then my wife is also the in-house baker too. So she's making muffins and stuff. Yeah.
And as nature shows us, you know, everything grows exponentially. So in the beginning, it's incremental increases. But as that grows up, you know, it's like they invite 2 people and those people. So 12 becomes 24 and 24 becomes 48, right? You know what I mean? And this kind of, you know,
kind of, it's the compound effect.
100%.
But it's always that consistency too. We're consistent. we don't deviate from our vision and what is it that we're serving people, caring and stuff like that. Because once you do that, people figure you out after a while. Man, this guy's full of shit, bro. He's just trying to get some money. It's not like that. Once they see that you're authentic.
And you're of service.
And you're of service, exactly. That comes first, service. Once they see that, it's like, oh, the doors fly open. When can I be there? How can I help? Like, what can I do? Like, incredible. Just incredible.
Yeah. Absolutely amazing. So yeah, if you guys want to look into a little bit more about Omziel healing, check the links in the description. We're going to have all sorts of stuff there. So if you want to tune into some of the men's circle, the events, you got music and all sorts of other things, ice plunges if you guys are into it.
That's right.
So if you're in the Northeast area, definitely hit up Omziel Sanctuary. Omziel Healing Sanctuary. So we'll links in the description for that. Check out the psychology workshops we have as well. But wrapping that up, thank you, Omar, for being here on The Conscious Endeavor.
Thank you, brother, for having me.
See you guys next time.
Appreciate you.